I always knew I was female. You don't just wake up one day and decide to be male or female, you just know.
Gender transitions are wild, especially when you are in the spotlight. And these celebs just changed the whole game with it. Trust me, their stories are as real and raw as it gets. Let's begin. Number 1, Caitlyn Jenner. We gotta start with Caitlyn Jenner, probably the most high-profile transition the world has ever seen. Remember Bruce Jenner, the Olympic gold medalist who was like the American hero in the 70s? Yeah, well, Bruce had this huge secret. He felt like he was living a lie, even while standing on that podium with a medal around his neck. Imagine winning the freak Olympics and still feeling trapped. Crazy, right?
Bruce Jenner is, I would say I've always been very confused with my gender identity since I was this big. I look at it this way. Bruce, always telling a lie. He's lived a lie his whole life about who he is. And I can't do that any longer.
Caitlyn finally transitioned in her mid-60s after decades of struggling with her gender identity. And when she came out in 2015, it wasn't just a simple reveal. It was a media hurricane. People were shocked, confused, and honestly a bit obsessed. But you gotta admit, it took guts, especially with all that Kardashian chaos in the background.
Is it worth it? Yes, I've lived a very, very, very good life.
Yeah.
My kids have worked extraordinarily hard. And it's not just the Kardashian side. Even the ones that you never see, I got 10 of them, you know.
Speaking of the Kardashians, Caitlyn was married 3 times before transitioning. Her most famous marriage, of course, was to Kris Jenner, the mastermind behind the Kardashian empire. Together, they had Kendall and Kylie, who, let's be real, are probably 2 of the most famous people on the planet. The whole family dynamic changed after Caitlyn came out, and there was plenty of drama to go around. Even though things got messy, Caitlyn is still close with Kendall and Kylie. As for her dating life post-transition, Caitlyn has had a couple of romances, but keeps things mostly private. Probably a nice break from all those reality TV cameras.
Bruce Jenner is, I would say I've always been very confused with my gender identity since I was this big. I look at it this way. Bruce, always telling a lie. He's lived a lie his whole life about who he is. And I can't do that any longer. So can I take my ponytail out? Yeah, why not, huh? We're talking about all this stuff. Yeah, let's take the damn ponytail out.
A symbolic moment after 65 years. In a sense, we start again.
Are you a woman?
Yes, for all intents and purposes, I am a woman. People look at me differently. They see you as this macho male, but my heart and my soul and everything that I do in life, it is part of me. That female side is part of me. That's who I am. I was not genetically born that way. As of now, I have all the male parts and all that kind of stuff. So in a lot of ways, we're different, okay? But we still identify as female. And that's very hard for Bruce Jenner to say.
Number 2, Laverne Cox. Now let's move on to Laverne Cox, aka the queen of trans representation on TV. Laverne wasn't always Laverne. She was assigned male at birth and called Roderick by her family. You know her from Orange is the New Black, where she played the unforgettable Sophia Bursett. But long before the red carpets and Emmy nominations, Laverne was just a kid from Alabama, getting bullied for being different. Can you imagine dealing with that? Growing up, she didn't even know what trans meant, but she knew something was off. Laverne started her transition in her 20s when she moved to New York to pursue acting. It wasn't just about becoming a woman, it was about survival in a world that wasn't exactly welcoming. And then Orange is the New Black happened, and boom, Laverne was everywhere. She wasn't just playing a character, she was living her truth right there on screen. That show made a huge impact on trans visibility, and Laverne became an icon overnight.
And that moment was so special for me and for so many people in our community, and it just felt really good. And it was a weird thing being on the cover of Time magazine. It's like, oh my gosh.
Sure is.
I hadn't been famous for like 5 minutes, and I'm on the cover of Time magazine. I was like, oh my God, this is weird. And so your tweet was like, okay, maybe this is okay.
When she is not fighting for trans rights or giving motivational speeches, she is all about fitness, fashion, and those iconic Instagram moments. As for her love life, she has been linked to a few partners but keeps it super low-key. Can you blame her? Well, after all that spotlight, sometimes you just want to keep your business private, right?
I'm just so happy to be here at the Emmys for the first time, and I'm talking to you, and this is like the E thing. My very first red carpet, I was in acting school. I was studying at Susan Batson's studio, and at the time she was working with Nicole Kidman. And Nicole Kidman offered tickets for her film, The Interpreter, which was opening at the Tribeca Film Festival. And all the other students were like, oh, we're just gonna go in. I was like, I'm gonna walk the red carpet. So like, I step onto the red carpet, and the moment I step onto the red carpet, a photographer says, this way, and I'm like, yeah, and I turn. He takes my picture and he says, oh, thanks, I was just testing my camera. I was so humiliated. I was trying to like have some dignity and some pride after I walking. I walked the gauntlet of being like completely ignored, and it was terrible. Now when I step onto a red carpet and they're screaming my name and they want me to turn this way, I think about that first time, and it just reminds me of what.
Number 3, Valentina Sampaio. Valentina Sampaio is the Brazilian bombshell who broke major barriers in the fashion world. She became the first trans woman to walk the Victoria's Secret runway and appear in Sports Illustrated. But let's rewind a bit. Valentina grew up in a small fishing village in northern Brazil. It wasn't exactly the kind of place you would expect to find a future supermodel, but she knew from a young age that she was a girl. She started transitioning in her teens, which took some serious guts, especially in a small conservative town. Fast forward to now, and Valentina is pretty much everywhere. Magazines, runways, campaigns, you name it. She is not just about looking pretty, though. She is also pushing for more inclusivity in fashion. Valentina's Instagram is full of beach pics, because, duh, she's a Brazilian and loves the ocean. In terms of dating, she has had a few flings here and there, but keeps things mostly under wraps. Who has got time for a messy love life when you're breaking down barriers, right?
Beleza é algo que transcende o nosso corpo. Vem da alma. Eu amo ser mulher. É muito bom a gente se aceitar, se amar, reconhecer o nosso valor. No Dia da Mulher, eu acho importante sim, mas não para ganhar flores. A gente quer respeito. Esse é meu primeiro Dia da Mulher. Oficialmente.
Tired of expensive, low-effort script writers for your YouTube channel? Autoscripter.ai is the ultimate solution. Say goodbye to low-quality, poorly retention amateur scripts that fail to generate thousands of views for your channel. At a fraction of the cost, Autoscripter.ai helps your videos go viral. In just 3 steps, Autoscripter.ai creates a polished script tailored to your needs. Just input your title concept, select your tone and style. The intuitive interface makes editing and refining effortless, fast, smart, and trusted by hundreds of satisfied users who have already discovered the amazing tool. Start your free trial today and watch Autoscripter.ai transform your YouTube channel. Just click the link in the video description below now.
Number 4, India Moore. India Moore is a force born as Louis Moore in the Bronx. Most of us know them from Posse, where they played Angel Evangelista, but their real-life story is just as dramatic. India identifies as non-binary and uses they-them pronouns, but the journey to that identity was full of ups and downs.
And I just want to show up for my peoples, you know, we all family, and it's really important that trans women are included in that because, you know, trans women are constantly excluded out of every narrative.
She grew up in the Bronx, where she dealt with foster care, homelessness, and all kinds of rejection, but they never let it break them. India started transitioning as a teenager, and it wasn't just about changing their appearance. It was about surviving in a world that didn't always have room for them. Modeling came first, mainly to pay the bills, but it quickly turned into a career. And then came Posse, a groundbreaking show that put trans and non-binary stories front and center.
Madame India Moore. Me? You are invited to the Louis Vuitton Fall Winter 2019 fashion show. You invited me? Tuesday, March 5th at 6 p.m.
Speaking of India's love life, they have dated both men and women, but tend to keep things on the down low. When it comes to personal style, though, they are all about making statements. Whether it is at protests or on red carpets, India knows how to turn heads.
When it comes to this event?
Well, Ebony called for me, and I was invited, and what made me feel so inspired to come was that they're honoring Pose, and Michelle Obama is going to be here, and I just want to show up for my peoples, you know, we all family, and it's really important that trans women are included in that because, you know, trans women are constantly excluded out of every narrative.
Amen. Amen.
And it's just like, it's false for us to sit around and act like, you know what I mean, like we're not beautiful and we're not great and we're not capable of inspiring and growing and loving and all these other things that everyone else is. So, you know, I don't know, I'm here. Shout out to Stephen Canals. He's the creator of the TV show that gave me life. Nobody would know who I am if it wasn't for Pose or Stephen, and we both come from the Bronx too.
Number 5, Janet Mock. Let's talk about Janet Mock, because she has done it all. Author, director, producer, activist, you name it. Janet Mock was originally named Charles Mock III, but that name never really felt right to her. She was born a male in Hawaii, but always felt more comfortable as a woman. She started transitioning in her late teens, right around time when she was chasing a college degree.
And I would sit there and I would read books. I would take books from there and I would take it home. I remember taking Waiting to Exhale and like reading it secretly because I knew it was an adult book that I wasn't supposed to read yet. And I just remember words and stories and seeing women that reflected me and looked like my image of self was so empowering.
Unlike what everyone thinks, living in Hawaii isn't all sunshine, though. Janet faced poverty, racism, and the whole being trans in America struggle. But Janet didn't just sit back and let life happen. She wrote Redefining Realness, a memoir that laid everything out there. What it is like being trans, a woman of color, and trying to make it in a world that isn't exactly friendly to either. She was also a major force behind Posse, a show that basically redefined trans representation on TV. Janet was married to photographer Aaron Treadwell, but they called it quits after a while. These days, she is more focused on making Hollywood a better place for trans folks and living her best life.
It's a lot harder, right?
Yeah, there's so many different journeys, right? Like when you think about it, for me, I was so lucky that I grew up in a place and in a time period where access to that medicine was there, that, you know, I also grew up in an environment where the Native Hawaiian culture has a space to designate for people who are gender nonconforming, who are not necessarily male or female, who may be in the middle, figuring things out a little bit. And so growing up with that consciousness, growing up with that access enabled me to, you know, help before puberty kicked in for me. But there's so many different journeys. There's many trans people who don't want to have, you know, any kind of surgeries or medical access in that way, and some who do, like myself.
Number 6, Teddy Quinlivan. Teddy was born with the name Jack Quinlivan, but did he ever feel like Jack? Nope. Teddy Quinlivan is a top model who wasn't always living her truth openly. She was already making waves in the fashion industry before she came out as trans in 2017. Can you imagine having that much pressure? You're in an industry that is all about looks, working with brands like Chanel and Louis Vuitton, and you're hiding this huge part of yourself?
What I expected to be 1 year of modeling turned into 3. And by that time, I've been confirmed for a worldwide exclusive contract with a very prestigious high fashion brand.
Teddy started transitioning in her late teens, but kept it private for a long, long time because, well, the fashion world isn't exactly known for being the most accepting place. But when she did finally come out, it was like a mic drop moment. She was already at the top, and she decided to let the world see her real self. Teddy is all about confidence now, and she's pretty vocal about the challenges trans models face. As for dating, she has been linked to a few people here and there, but she is not one to make her love life the center of attention. When she is not on the runway, you can probably find her at the gym, sipping her green juice or sharing her thoughts on social media.
I always knew I was female. You don't just wake up one day and decide to be male or female, you just know. This season, especially when I came out, it was really interesting for me because I kind of thought people would be more shook by it. And then I would show up to shows and the casting director would come up to me and be like, wow, Teddy, that was such a powerful story that you shared. Thank you for sharing it. Okay, there's 3 hours before the show, can you please get into hair and makeup? I didn't know a single transgender person, so I just kind of thought I was crazy. I knew I felt this way, but I didn't have the tools, and nobody had explained to me that being transgender was even an option. This is a real issue. It's something that deserves to be spoken about because the safest thing for a trans person to do is to know about their trans identity.
Number 7, Inez Raoult. Inez Raoult made history as the first openly transgender playmate for Playboy. Born in Paris, Inez grew up as Erin Raoult, but that name never really stuck with her. Imagine trying to rock a French vibe with a name that didn't even feel like you. She started transitioning at 16, which, let's be real, is pretty gutsy. At first, she kept things low-key, probably because the world wasn't exactly ready for someone like her. Now, about her love life, Inez has had her fair share of romances. One of her more public relationships was with French actor and director Michael Youn. The two were often spotted together, but Inez has always kept things private about what went down between them. No messy breakups plastered on tabloids for her. Nowadays, she's rumored to be seeing someone from the fashion world, but she's keeping it hush-hush. When she's not working or attending events, Inez loves the simple things, spending time by the ocean, meditating, and getting involved in causes she believes in. She's big on activism, focused on trans rights, gender equality, and even environmental issues. She's not just about the glam, she's about making a change too.
Accepter cette proposition, j'ai dû faire un coming out, qui veut dire dévoiler son secret au monde entier, alors que personne ne savait que j'étais une personne transsexuelle.
Number 8, Danica Roem. Danica Roem is one badass politician. She was born as Dan Roem, and she lived as a journalist before finally deciding to transition in 2012. It was a hell of a journey for her, juggling journalism, gender identity issues, and eventually politics. She always knew she wasn't fitting into the man box society put her in, but it took her until 2012 to fully transition. Danica's entry into politics was fueled by her passion to fix real issues, like Virginia's awful traffic jams. No joke, that was her first campaign promise. Danica's long-term partner is named Kelly, and the two have been together for over a decade now. They've managed to keep their relationship pretty private, which is honestly impressive considering Danica's high-profile political career. Kelly's been a rock for Danica, standing by her during her groundbreaking election campaign, media chaos, and everything in between. Outside of politics, Danica's not your typical suit and tie kind of person. She's a die-hard metalhead who's been playing in metal bands for years. If she's not busy writing legislation, she's probably shredding on her guitar or hanging with her metalhead buddies. She's also close to her stepdaughter, who's a big part of her life. Together, they make a pretty chill, supportive family unit, at least when the cameras aren't rolling.
My name is Danica Roem. I'm the Virginia State Delegate from the 13th District of the Virginia House of Delegates. I do solemnly swear. I was elected on November 7th, 2017, sworn in on January 10th, 2018, becoming the first out and seated transgender state legislator in American history. I first realized I was trans roughly in about 5th grade or so, and by the time I was in 7th grade, there was no question about it. And at the same time, I was too scared to tell anyone. It wasn't until college where I really started telling anyone else. At the same time, I didn't really come out fully until my 30th birthday. First, I was telling people I was bi, then I was telling them I was gay, then I was explaining I was trans. And it was just, I felt each step along the way a little bit easier for people to understand. If I hadn't come out, I wouldn't have met my partner. And if I hadn't met my partner, I wouldn't become a stepmom. And so the most important parts of my life now, that's because I came out. By being able to be vulnerable enough to be visible in the first place, to put myself out in front of other people, it shows them that, yeah, I can succeed because of who I am.
Number 9, Andrea Jenkins. Andrea Jenkins, originally named Donald Jenkins, found her true self in her 30s, a time when most people are settling down, not reinventing themselves. Growing up black and trans wasn't easy, but Andrea's got a poet's heart, using her words to heal, inspire, and shake things up. Her journey wasn't just about changing her appearance, it was about becoming who she was meant to be, and she did it with a hell of a lot of grace. In 2017, she made history by becoming the first black, openly transgender woman elected to public office in the U.S., representing Minneapolis. But her story isn't just about politics. Andrea is a proud poet with several published works that explore her life struggles, victories, and everything in between. Andrea has been in a few committed relationships, but she's always kept the personal details low-key. She was married to her longtime partner, Angela Jenkins, for years before they parted ways. Angela was incredibly supportive of Andrea's activism. Andrea's also been a mother figure to a few foster kids, trying to provide the kind of love and acceptance she didn't always get herself. Her personal life revolves around art, creativity, and activism. When she's not fighting for housing rights or trans visibility, Andrea's probably writing poems, working on community projects, or simply unwinding with close friends over a glass of wine. She's got a unique blend of fierceness and warmth that makes her a total inspiration.
It's a big deal. And it's not only a big deal for transgender people, it's a big deal for America on economic development issues that ensures equity for all of our citizens. It just gives me a tremendous amount of pride to live in a community that says, it doesn't matter what your skin color is, what your gender identity is, what your sexual orientation is. If you exhibit the leadership, the commitment, the experience to represent this community, then we're going to support you. And that is incredible.
Number 10, Tyler Titus. Tyler Titus is elected official, but they are also so much more than a political title. Tyler Titus, born as Taylor Titus, didn't just break into politics, they knocked the door down. Living in rural Pennsylvania, Tyler always felt like the typical gender norms didn't just fit. It wasn't until adulthood that Tyler decided to transition fully, and it wasn't just a physical change. It was deeply emotional that allowed them to finally feel at home with their own skin. Tyler is married to their partner, Daniel, and the two have built a strong, supportive family with their 2 children, Alex and Riley. Daniel has been Tyler's ride or die throughout their journey, from transitioning to running for office. They are seen sharing family moments on social media, from cozy camping trips to baking disasters in the kitchen. Tyler's got that warm, nurturing energy that makes them both a great parent and a passionate politician. Tyler's career started as a mental health counselor, focusing on helping kids navigate the mess of adolescence, which eventually led them to public service. They are all about making schools safer and more inclusive, working hard to ensure that no kid feels the kind of alienation they did growing up. Besides the political stuff, Tyler loves to cook, spend time outdoors, and even try their hand at gardening.
Democrat candidate Tyler Titus has announced a victory as Erie County executive in the primary election.
This victory is ours. This victory belongs to the working people of Erie County. This victory belongs to those who want new leadership, who believe in Erie's future.
According to the LGBTQ Victory Fund, Tyler Titus could be the first transgender county executive in the United States.
Number 11, Yance Ford. Yance Ford is not your average filmmaker. You probably know him from the Raw, Oscar-nominated doc Strong Island, which isn't just some random project. It is deeply personal, telling the story of his brother's murder. But Yance's story goes back even further. Born as Yolanda Ford, Yance always felt like he was living a lie. To grow up as a black woman was already challenging enough, and adding gender dysphoria into the mix was like living in a constant state of confusion. When Yance started his transition in his 30s, it wasn't just about physical changes. There were emotional and social hurdles to overcome too. Imagine dealing with a predominantly white, cisgender film industry while coming into your own identity. Yance's documentary Strong Island is his therapy session, a raw look into racial injustice, family trauma, and his own process of acceptance. Yance's partner, who he has kept out of the limelight, has been his anchor throughout the process. They have shared both the mundane and the monumental moments, like Yance's historic Oscar nod. Outside of filmmaking, he is a pretty chill guy. You won't catch him posting cheesy couple selfies on Instagram. He is more into a quiet evening with a good book, some jazz, and a glass of wine. His activism is still strong, but it is mixed with a sense of peace that only comes from living authentically.
The next generation of filmmakers do to ensure a diverse set of voices are represented and everyone can picture themselves on screen. The next generation of filmmakers, in my opinion, can work collaboratively with one another to ensure that the problems of representation, access, and ability to tell one's own story is completely dead with my generation. You guys have to work together, share your resources, pool your ideas, share your cameras, don't let anything stand in your way, but most of all, find your allies, be one another's ally, and be an ally to someone that you don't know. If you're not a filmmaker, and you want to support creatives, find a community organization where you live and donate so that they can support aspiring filmmakers as well.
Number 12, Paris Lees. Paris Lees' story is like something out of a novel. Paris Lees, born Byron Lees, is like a walking, talking revolution. Growing up in Nottingham, England, she was more than just a gay boy trying to get straight A's. She was trapped in a world that didn't fit, and it all came crashing down during her teenage years when she got involved with the wrong crowd, leading to a stint in prison. But that experience became Paris's wake-up call. Paris transitioned in her early 20s, shedding Byron like an old, uncomfortable coat. She went from behind closed doors to front-page magazine spreads. With her bold lipstick, killer fashion, and a no-nonsense attitude, Paris graced the pages of Vogue and became the first trans woman to write a column for the iconic magazine. When it comes to her love life, Paris has definitely had her fair share of flings. She has been linked to a few well-known faces in London's nightlife, but she has never been one to settle down. All she wants to do is live her best life, champagne at London's hottest clubs, dancing till sunrise, and a string of admirers trying to keep up with her pace. Paris is also a fierce advocate and appears on TV shows and panels. She never shies away from calling out ignorance and demanding change, but behind the glamour and sass, Paris enjoys quieter moments too, like reading on rainy days, snuggling with her cat Mr. Whiskers, and indulging in vegan desserts.
Trans people are less than 1% of the population, right? And I don't know about you, but it seems like we're in the headlines every single day, and you'd be forgiven for thinking that we're responsible for all of the world's ills. Constantly, the debate about trans issues, trans people are framed as the problem. We're causing these huge problems to the rest of society. The sky's going to fall in, whereas all of the evidence suggests that the complete opposite is true, and that actually trans people suffer horrific violence. 45% of young trans people in this country, in modern Britain, have attempted suicide. Not thought about, attempted. I think we need an urgent public debate on who and what is causing these kids to feel so desperate and alone, and what we can do about it to protect them. Anything that a trans person does that is bad or could be perceived to be a problem to people, we hear about it in the headlines. Schools say that they're going to relax their gender policy, their policy for school uniforms. It's the end of the world. Kids are actually sitting there trying to kill themselves. Nobody talks about it. And you'll notice that I'm a transgender person. I am the only transgender person who's ever been on Question Time, because the conversation about us is conducted over our heads. It doesn't actually include the people who this conversation affects directly. And it's really interesting because...
Number 13, Patricio Manuel. Before Patricio Manuel became a trailblazer in men's boxing, he was known as Patricia Manuel. Before transitioning, Patricio was a successful female boxer. He completed at the highest levels, including the women's U.S. Olympic trials. But he always felt that something wasn't right. In his mid-20s, he started transitioning, and let me tell you, it wasn't a walk in the park. He faced tons of backlash, not just from the boxing world, but also from sponsors, teammates, and even friends who couldn't understand his decision. Can you imagine the guts it took to change your whole identity in such a hyper-masculine world? Patricio had a rocky start after transitioning, with some boxers refusing to fight him and sponsors dropping out, and there were plenty of naysayers. But Patricio just kept training and eventually won his first pro fight as a trans man. He has been in a long-term relationship with someone who has been there through all the blood, sweat, and tears, literally. Outside the ring, Patricio is a pretty chill guy who is into fitness, good food, and spending time with loved ones. But don't be fooled by that calm demeanor. He is always ready to pack a punch for trans rights.
I think identity, when we boil it down, it's who we are, but it's also how the world perceives us. You know, when I was a little kid, I always thought of myself as a boy. But you learn really early on that someone like me is immediately going to be told they're a girl. So I learned to be quiet. I learned to stifle that part of me. But the thing is, about anything that you push down long enough, it will have a bad reaction. And that reaction for me was I completely disconnected from myself. I just mentally checked out so that I could continue coping through life. And it was boxing that brought me back into my body, and it was boxing that allowed me to be proud of actually what I was physically able to do. But boxing also taught me to really be introspective and be like, okay, what do I really want? And how am I gonna have to work for it? Because unfortunately, when you deviate from the norms that society has constructed, you have to fight for that identity and you have to really make it yourself.
Number 14, Angelica Ross. Angelica Ross is a queen, no two ways about it. Most of us know her for her roles in Posse and American Horror Story, but her journey started way before Hollywood ever called. Born as Ross Angelica Saavedra in Kenosha, Wisconsin, Angelica always knew she wasn't like the other boys in her town. She grew up in the Midwest as a black kid, feeling trapped in the wrong body, and it wasn't exactly a walk in the park. When she hit her early 20s, Angelica decided it was time to make a move, literally. She packed up and headed to Chicago, where she started her transition. And no, she didn't just change physically, it was a whole mental shift too. She had to unlearn years of pretending to be someone she wasn't. Angelica is a true entrepreneur at heart. She founded Trans Tech Social Enterprises, a company dedicated to helping trans folks break into the tech industry. She's the kind of person who doesn't just talk about change, she makes it happen. She's been open about how tough dating can be as a trans woman, especially in the spotlight. She has had her share of relationships, but things haven't always been smooth. One of her more serious partners was a guy named Jaden, a creative director she met in LA. They had a strong connection, but life in the public eye made things complicated, and they eventually called it quits. These days, Angelica is more focused on self-love, her career, and enjoying her moments on the red carpet because, honestly, she always serves Luke after Luke.
I'm Angelica Ross. I am an actor and an entrepreneur, founder of Trans Tech Social Enterprises, which is a program that helps trans and gender nonconforming people, as well as other folks in our LGBTQIA community, build their skills, build their networks, and have access to more opportunities. One of the labels I also like to use for myself, I would think, is I'm a blurred, which is like a black nerd. What is the word for a hot nerd? You know, because I kind of claim that too. But you know, nerds come in all forms and shapes, and I've been a nerd since I was a kid. I love to read books. I love to play on the computer. I'm constantly just engaged in information. I think that's what makes you a nerd. When I first started working on websites, I had no clue what I was doing. I was just the techie, geeky person that could figure something out. And so I would Google things and I would, watch video tutorials, and I taught myself HTML, CSS, which are more the easier languages to learn in programming. And then
Number 15, Christine Hallquist. Christine Hallquist, born as David Hallquist, spent decades living a double life. One as the successful CEO of a Vermont utility company, and the other as a woman trapped in a man's body. As David, she rose through the ranks, wearing that suit and tie like a uniform, but deep down, this was not what she wanted. David was just the name she used to survive in a world that wasn't ready for Christine. In her 50s, Christine finally had enough of pretending. She started her transition. She knew well that it would shake things up both in her personal life and in the corporate world. Imagine managing an entire company while undergoing one of the most vulnerable changes of your life. It's pretty wild, right? But Christine owned it. She even took it a step further, running for governor of Vermont as the first openly trans major party nominee in the U.S. Even though she didn't win, she became a symbol of hope and progress. Her children were among her biggest supporters, celebrating Christine for her courage and authenticity. Now, Christina's lifestyle is all about the little joys, family dinners, gardening, and staying involved in community projects. She's also an advocate for sustainable energy, with the broader fight for trans rights.
Transitioning from man to woman, I understood theoretically about the gender hierarchy, but to experience it firsthand and personal is a different thing.
How does it feel to be the icebreaker for the LGBT community?
I saw the story in The Guardian.
You have the New York Times here. You have tons of national attention on this.
I thought I would end up homeless.
We are making history tonight. What do you feel?
But at the same time, you gotta live your truth. In my wildest dreams, I would have never thought I would be sitting here today. My spouse and I were gonna live with this to our grave. And I couldn't live with the fact I wasn't being honest with my children. December 2nd, 2015, I transitioned from man to woman, and Vermont welcomed me with open arms.
Heading to Grand Isle County, but I'm going to vote for you.
Oh, well, thank you so much. Thanks. The harshness of men to woman, it's happening to me as a transgender woman, but it's the same language that's used with woman. You get men who say, oh, you're ugly. And I'm like, dude, I'm 62, I get to be ugly. Why do you direct this towards women?
Number 16, Jesse James Keitel. Jesse James Keitel was born as Jessica Keitel, and growing up, the world saw Jessica, but inside, they always knew they were Jesse. Childhood was like living in a play where they were cast in the wrong role. Every dress, every long hairstyle felt like a costume. But Jesse wasn't just hiding, they were observing, planning, and waiting for the right moment to make their big debut. In their 20s, Jesse finally started transitioning. They chose to present as non-binary and embrace who they really were. Around the same time, their acting career was taking off, and the timing couldn't have been better. Jesse landed a breakout role in Big Sky and became one of the first non-binary characters on primetime TV. That was a win for trans and non-binary visibility everywhere. Jesse keeps their personal life pretty low-key, but they've hinted at a supportive partner who's been with them through the ups and downs. Outside of work, Jessie loves diving into different art forms, painting, fashion, and even makeup experiments that express their unique sense of style. They're passionate about pushing for more trans and non-binary roles in Hollywood, aiming to make it a space where everyone can see themselves represented.
Hi, I'm Jesse James Keitel from ABC's Big Sky, and I want to give a huge congratulations to President Biden and Vice President Harris. It is such a welcome sigh of relief to usher in an administration who will respect and honor LGBT Americans, particularly the transgender men and women of the U.S. military. An administration who will uphold the idea that all men, women, and thems are created equal, endowed by their creators with certain unalienable rights. Girl, we've been through it. As trans people, we've had to watch our rights be debated, mocked, ridiculed, and challenged in a court of law, especially over the last 4 years. And hearing you address the atrocities facing the trans community, it gave me hope. Mr. President, I have high hopes and even higher expectations. And I want to thank you for all you've done for LGBT Americans and all you will do. So good luck, and don't fuck it up.
Number 17, Gianmarco Negri. Now, let's head over to Italy, where Gianmarco Negri, whose birth name was Gianna Negri, made history as the country's first openly trans mayor. Gianna was a successful lawyer, but the title never quite felt like a win because Gianmarco wasn't being true to himself. It wasn't until his 40s, yes, his 40s, that he decided to transition and finally step into the man he knew he was. Imagine living with that feeling for decades. After transitioning, Gianmarco didn't just sit back and bask in self-realization. He ran for mayor of Tromello, a small town in Italy. It was a bold move, especially in a country known for its conservative views. And guess what? He won. Gianmarco's victory was monumental, not just for him, but for the entire trans community in Italy, which still faces significant challenges. Now, on to his personal life. Gianmarco's partner, Carla Rossi, has been by his side through thick and thin. They are the kind of couple that loves the quiet life, like spending weekends tending to their garden, cooking homemade pasta, and walking their 2 dogs, Bella and Dino, around the countryside. Gianmarco's a whiz in the kitchen, with his signature dish being a killer risotto. He is not just a politician, he is a family man who is big on loyalty and love.
Quello che ha fatto la mia lista è di grande valore, perché devi sapere che nessuno di loro è LGBT. Io a loro ricordo di aver chiesto: siete sicuri di quello che state facendo, perché potreste subire degli attacchi, cioè voi state comunque...
Number 18, Zach Barak. Zach Barak, born Zachary Parker, is like the superhero we never knew we needed. He is not just one of the first openly trans actors to hit the big screen in a Marvel film, he is also one of the first to do it with genuine geekiness. Growing up in Illinois, Zach always felt like he was living in a different universe from everyone else. He wasn't just the weird kid, he was the weird kid who couldn't fit into the traditional gender box. Zach's role in Spider-Man, Far From Home, put him on the map. But he is not stopping there. He has been vocal about pushing Hollywood to cast more trans actors in roles that aren't just about being trans. He's a proud nerd, too, an avid gamer who can talk about everything from Dungeons & Dragons to the latest Marvel comics. As for his love life, Zach is dating fellow actor Ryan Quinn. The two are total couple goals on social media, sharing goofy selfies, cooking attempts gone wrong, and lots of behind-the-scenes moments. They even dress up as Han Solo and Chewbacca for Halloween, just to seal the nerdiness. Zach's home life is filled with comic books, collectible figurines, and late-night gaming marathons with Ryan. It is the dream life for any nerdy trans kid who grew up wishing they could be the hero.
First ever red carpet premiere, what has it been like?
Like when you first go on a roller coaster and you think you're gonna, like, you know, right before the drop. No, I'm very excited, obviously. Mostly because I haven't seen my friends in ages and I'm so happy to see them and everybody looks amazing. But I'm also just really grateful. I'm incredibly grateful.
Well, of course, we've spoken about this a little bit, but you made history by being in this film, the first openly trans actor in a Marvel Studios, this big superhero universe. What does it mean to you to be here and have that honor?
Exactly what you said. It's an honor, a responsibility and an honor, and something that I intend to do what I can with it, right? Like, I want people to get the best experience out of this movie. I want them to be able to take something meaningful out of it, because to me, that's what superhero movies have always been. And they're so, as we discussed, they're so inherently trans. It's about double identity, and that's so much a part of my life. So I am so deeply honored and excited to be here.
Number 19, Aidan Dowling. Aidan Dowling was born Aidan Dowling, and even as a kid, Aidan struggled with body image. He grew up with curves that never felt right, and Aidan battled with dysphoria for years. It was a constant struggle, especially during puberty, when his body seemed to be moving further from who he truly was. In his early 20s, Aidan decided to transition, become Aidan, and find empowerment through fitness. Aidan's transition was as much about mental strength as it was about physical change. He channeled his energy into bodybuilding by using fitness as a way to transform his body and, in turn, his sense of self. His appearance on the cover of Men's Health wasn't just a personal win, it was a major milestone for trans visibility. Aidan showed the world that trans men can redefine masculinity on their own terms. Aidan's personal life revolves around his family. He is married to a supportive partner, and they have a son who is the center of their world. Aidan's social media is packed with workout videos, motivational speeches, and plenty of cute family moments. He is passionate about showing other trans folks that they can build the life and body they want while also maintaining a healthy balance.
They describe the Ultimate Man as a fearless doer who gives back to his community. When they say fearless, I think just my life, the life that I lead. I'm not sitting here saying, you know what, I can't be the ultimate guy because I was born a female. I'm not saying that because I don't believe it.
Hey guys, I know it's been a little bit of time, so I just wanted to make some updates. Coming out, I came out to one of my friends, told them I was transgender. I want to make a video because I just came out to my mother.
I think the biggest challenge in the beginning of your transition is just looking in the mirror and saying, I'm transgender. I dealt with not having any self-worth. I didn't feel worthy of really life in general. I was very depressed, suicidal, and I didn't think that life was for me.
Number 20, June Eastwood. Born as Jonathan Eastwood, June grew up in the laid-back, open spaces of Montana. Jonathan was a track star from day one, fast, talented, and seemingly unstoppable. But despite the cheers and medals, there was always this nagging feeling deep inside, like the person everyone saw wasn't really her. Deciding to transition wasn't a spur-of-the-moment thing for June. Imagine being at the top of your game but feeling trapped in the wrong body. For June, it was about finding a version of herself that felt real. It took guts, especially in a conservative place where people love their traditions as much as their football. In her early 20s, June came out and began her transition, which came with its own set of challenges, like suddenly being in the spotlight for a reason she never expected. But running was always her thing, and she wasn't about to let anything stop her. June kept competing, now as a female athlete at the University of Montana, breaking new ground in NCAA Division I sports as one of the first openly trans athletes. But June is not all about chasing records and trophies. She has got a bigger goal, making sure trans athletes have a fair shot. She's faced criticism, sure, but she has used her story to speak up about acceptance and inclusion in sport. June has got this laid-back, earthy vibe too. When she is not running, you will find her hiking, exploring trails, or chilling by the lakes.
June Eastwood was assigned male at birth, but in middle school, that changed. Eastwood is the first ever transgender to compete in Division I cross country, and that brings a lot of criticism.
I knew the media attention that it would bring, so I've sort of prepared myself the last year and a half for what I was referring to as the storm.
Eastwood redshirted her senior year to go through a year of testosterone suppression treatment. The NCAA requires this in order to be eligible to compete. Now finally racing, Eastwood credits her head coach for helping her fight against the critics.
If people will email him or call him with negative things to say, he'll call them back and be like, hey, let's have a conversation about this.
Teammate and freshman Beatrix Frizzell says the people who think Eastwood is just competing on the women's team to win don't really know June.
I think if they kind of met somebody like June, they would realize that that's not really what's going through her head. And June doesn't really care about winning as much as improving for the team.
There's some positive support, but the majority of the attention tends to be negative. But that won't stop her.
Ultimately, the reason why I decided to continue running was because I didn't want to give up doing what I love just because of who I am as a person. And I wanted to be able to show other people that they could do the same.
Eastwood says she's now just trying to do what she loves, help her team win some races.
These trans celebs paved their own way by taking bold steps and chasing their dreams, even when the odds were stacked against them. From fashion runways to politics and film, they showed us what is possible when you decide to live life on your own terms, no matter the obstacles. It is inspiring to see them owning their stories, finding happiness, and making waves while doing it. Makes you think, right? What would happen if you started living more true to yourself? If this got you thinking, give it a thumbs up. Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to subscribe for more.